I lied again. I did it again. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can. Fast, following the Forrest podcast. Whoo-wee. You know what I'm saying? I told y'all in February that I would be more consistent, and here we are in the beginning of April. And I think that that's probably still more consistent relative to the last time I spoke to you before that podcast. I want to say I'm still kind of holding up my end of the bargain. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a matter of fact, I'd like to give myself a round of applause. If that's okay with you. Let's take a moment. Let's have like real talk for a second, right? Like, producing a solo podcast is far more challenging than I ever thought it would be. Perhaps that's because I'm a little bit of, not a perfectionist, right? Because I understand that the nature of what it is and everything like that, but it's not going to be perfect, right? Like, how many conversations do you have that are perfect? What even is a perfect conversation, right? But one thing that I think I took for granted was how easy and natural it feels doing a podcast with multiple people, right? Obviously, like a person that I consider a close friend of mine. If you don't know, I operate the PYO Boys podcast with my homeboy Biggs. You know what I'm saying? That's something that we do together that goes real well. We also do the Salted Nets podcast as well. The Salted Nets one, I think, needs a little retooling. We'll figure that out. But you probably know about that podcast if you're listening to this one. And if you don't, go listen to that one. It's really, really funny. This podcast can be funny, right? But I think that podcast more often than not is funny. This podcast is going to go wherever the fuck my mind takes it, whenever it takes it there. But yeah, man, writing the scripts, fucking trying to execute, trying to have interesting monologues essentially it's just not as easy as I fucking thought by myself. Why? Because there's nobody to bounce things off of. All right, hopefully, as I continue to do this, maybe I can get to know some of the listeners, and maybe I can start to understand what it is that maybe you would be saying, and put that in the conversation with what I'm saying at the moment, and you know, extrapolate some shit from that. But ultimately, I just keep it real. I've recorded several fucking episodes. I probably have said this already before. I record this podcast. I do. I record it, and I'm not satisfied with it a lot of the fucking time. And what I refuse to do when God has gifted me the kinds of ears that can hear when I am full of shit, right? Everybody don't have that. Everybody's bullshit detector does not work on themselves. You know what I'm saying? I've always been fortunate. Maybe it's because with the music shit and all that, where it was like you're terrified of putting out shit that people are laughing at or that they think is whack. Whatever the actual origin of it is, my bullshit detector, my bullshit meter works on me. It works on me. So I'll get like fucking 10, 15, 20 minutes in, and I'll just be like, this is fucking whack. This shit is whack. I'm not putting whack shit out. I'm not doing that. That's not my body. That's not my get down. I'm never going to be able to be that guy. I'm not. I'm sorry. And I especially want to apologize to all my niggas that can't help but put out whack shit. Weak shit, man. I can't be that type of man. That's just not who I am. Not because my get down is so much greater, but because my fear of embarrassing myself is it's through the fucking roof. And then this shit is hella vulnerable in a lot of fucking ways, dog. This is some vulnerable shit. I try to go to vulnerable places. So you know what that means. We super gotta make sure we not out here sounding like fucking idiots. Assholes on the mic. You understand what I'm saying? But yeah, it's just been difficult, right? So I think what I'm gonna end up having to do is just kind of rearranging the way that I do it. Rearranging the way that I write the scripts. I don't necessarily think I can be so broad with the bullet points and then just naturally expect to be able to go 5-10 minutes extra on every fucking thing. I think I'm gonna have to flesh it out, which is dope. It's super cool. I'm fucking there. I'm down for it. I'm here. But a young nigga was racking his brain, right? I need people to understand where I'm coming from here. I was racking my brain. I'm trying to figure out. I'm like, damn, how can I get this shit out at least by fucking weekly? What I do when shit's slow. I know I'm going to have to start like pre-recording little evergreen shits and all that, but I'm just like, damn, bro. for a second, I'm like, should I start like diving into like fucking murder mysteries and start reading those like once a week? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, once every like other cycle, right? Like, it's like, okay, I put out a regular episode one week, and then the next week I put out an episode where like I'm diving into a murder mystery or some shit like that, which I still might do, right? I think I'm trying to justify it. Right? Like, I'm trying to justify it, but I feel like there might be a little niche there for me. I'm into that type of shit, you know what I'm saying? And I do think like the way that I would do it would perhaps lend itself to maybe justifying its existence. Because that's the point of all this shit, man. It's like what you gonna hear people say, the market is oversaturated, this, that, and the third. And I'm a firm believer that if you stand on your shit and you're about it, the market being oversaturated is simply, you know, it's not an excuse to no longer produce. It's simply meaning that when things shift in whatever new direction, that the people who are really, really familiar with what the prior vein of that thing was will be better equipped to pivot. You know what I'm saying? Simply how a lot of people who've done radio before thrived on podcasting in podcast settings. Because this shit is an art form. It's not always easy. Right? And this is why so many people do these things with another person. You almost have to be a psychopath. You almost have to be a fucking psychopath to think that you can drive content all on your own without needing to bounce anything off anybody else. You have to be a psychopath, but you have to be like self-indulgent to the umpteenth degree. I will let you guess which one I am. I will. We'll allow that. And, you know, I'll start letting you guys into my life like on a grander scale, right? Like I'll start calling people and having them on the podcast and doing this and doing that. And perhaps that this can be an environment that maybe interviews can live. I don't know. We still decide whether or not interviews should live on Pew Isle Boys or should live here. But I say all that to say that baby, please, I want you to believe me. I want you to believe me one more time. I know I said it before and I wasn't true to you, but I just want you to believe me this one more time. I'm going to bring you Falling in the Forest content more consistently. I do love this show. I enjoy doing it. I'm in love with the process, right? But sometimes growth is painful, right? Sometimes it's not pretty. Sometimes it comes in ebbs and flows, baby. That's just how I feel. But we gonna keep getting into exactly what I think this episode needs to be about, right? Which is many things, but one thing that I'm trying to figure out right now that's kind of it's not. I don't want to say that it's befuddling me. I don't even want to say that I've reached some kind of impasse or that I'm stressing it at all. But I'm trying to figure out at 27, what is my go-to drink at the bar? I think it's weird that I don't have one. I think that it's probably tied to the chaotic nature of my mind, right? Of the way that I interface with reality in the world in general. I think it's tied to that somehow, where it's like I'm not a person that's easy to pin down, right? Like I'm not a person, although I do find it easy to eat the same fucking thing for lunch every single day. Like motherfuckers make fun of me for that. Where it's like I go to work and I will eat the same fucking thing every day. But I do that, you know, it truncates things. It makes shit easier. Like I don't want to spend 5-10 minutes deciding what the fuck I'm gonna eat every day. I'm not one of those motherfuckers who my appetite is motivated by like uniqueness, right? Like it's like I've had this too much, I can't eat it no more. Like nah, if I'm hungry, I could probably eat it. I don't have to be excited about it. And for me, a lot of the excitement around food comes around like the real unhealthy shit anyway, where it's like I'm not necessarily eating macaroni and cheese or chicken because I'm looking for a kick or a high. You know what I'm saying? I'm eating that because I'm trying not to die. Right? But like, you know, and you eat candies and cakes and pastries and all that other shit. That's the shit that that's the shit that be having a motherfucker itching and scratching for real. But yeah, like I don't have a go-to drink at the bar. Right? Like for a while I thought it would be like tequila and pineapple or I knew it wasn't going to be anything with vodka in it. And that's the thing. A lot of people's go-to drink like Moscow Mule and like vodka and soda and shit like that. I don't do vodka. I've had very negative experiences with vodka. I'll be real. We can get into it. You know what I'm saying? Because I share everything here. And I'm assuming that most of my close friends don't listen to this. So these are embarrassing stories that I'm willing to tell. Most of my close friends done heard these stories. So you really can't call me on it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to I ain't even going to rip the Band-Aid off. We're going to get into it. So I think that vodka is a lot of people's early experimental liquor, right? You can get You can get vodka relatively cheap, and shitty vodka you can get for absolutely nothing. So, like, if you're having a get-together with, like, fucking 30 people and you're 16, 17, and you think you're fucking grown, and you think you know what fucking is happening, right? You know how much Amsterdam you can buy? Not to shit on the folks in Amsterdam. I shouldn't even said that brand name. We don't even do that here. But do you know how much cheap vodka you can fucking buy, right? If it's 30 of y'all, 2 or 3 of y'all motherfuckers could put up, and y'all gonna have enough for everybody to get drunk off of. You understand what I'm saying? It's a real different vibe with that. So, of course, early on, the end of high school, the beginning of college, which I did not complete. Like, we're not even gonna go down that road where niggas hear me talk about my experiences in college and be like, oh, this nigga never said he didn't graduate. I'm telling you now, I did not graduate. Nigga, ain't no cum laude over here, nigga. Pause. I'm just saying. But, so I would just have these real, first of all, my negative experiences with alcohol are TV worthy. They're all ridiculous and make no sense and are ultimately quite harmless, which I'm happy about. They wrap up like a fucking sitcom where it's like shit can get real close to the edge. You know what I'm saying? But everything gonna be all right. You feel me? Like, you know, Will got shot trying to protect Carl from getting robbed. And that was terrible. And that was sad. Right? But everything worked out in the end. Will ain't, you know what I mean? Will ain't have a pronounced limp for fucking 4 seasons afterwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've survived everything that I've been through. And the majority of those things I don't remember. So one night I'm on my way home from some type of fucking party, gang. I can't even tell you which one it was. Because back then, drinking was really not great for me. And I also had a significant other at the time who was going through some negative things in her personal life. And because of that, was getting familiar with bar culture and drinking a little earlier than me. And she was of age or whatever. There was times when she had a fake ID and shit like that. And I was a little jealous. Boy, I be thinking sometimes, like, how you ain't give me no fake ID? Like, that's some trifling ass shit when your girl got a fake ID, but you don't, my nigga. You just kind of sitting there. Like, I didn't really think about it like that back then because I wasn't really drinking. But I think now, like, wait a fucking minute. Like, who does that? Wouldn't you want to be in those spaces with me? What the fuck going on? But, like, you know, she had a group of friends that was... And so I was a little jealous, right? Because I didn't really have a real relationship with alcohol other than just, like, making some mistakes, right? Just making some fucking mistakes. And... So as I'm going through the motions, trying to kind of teach myself, me and my boys taught ourselves a lot of what we know about what we knew back then about fucking drinking, which is obviously a terrible fucking mix. Motherfuckers are drinking damn near anything and doing whatever. And this was a night I wasn't even with my boys. So I'm coming home. I used to live in Flatbush. Don't know why that's pertinent to the story because I'm not going to give you street names and shit like that anyway. But I hopped on a train from fucking Queens to fucking Flatbush. I'm on my way home, but the train that I got on let me off like way, way further downtown, and I needed to be like at Atlantic fucking Terminal to either take a bus or take a fucking train. So somewhere in between about a 20-minute walk, I swear to God, I'm not capping here, bro. Somewhere in between about a 20-minute walk, the majority of which I was clearly conscious for because I walked. With intent. I was not wandering aimlessly, my nigga. I moseyed on to where I had to go. While I'm waiting for the bus, it occurs to me, I realized that at some point throughout the course of this walk, I swear to God, no bullshit, I shitted myself. I booted. I went crazy on the strip. I was on the strip shitty, bro. I swear to God. I had shat myself, bro. No cap. Now, I'm in disbelief, right? I'm a grown-ass man at this point. I'm not, right? In spirit and mind, I'm not. But, like, identification-wise, I believe, I was, like, I was over 18, I think. You know what I'm saying? And so, I'm like, what in the world? Mind you, now I gotta get on this bus, right? This was way back days. This was broke. And I don't even think Uber was really what it is now, where, like, I wasn't really familiar with Uber and Lyft or using it at this point, right? I graduated high school in 2014? This had to be 2015 or 2016, the latest. And I don't know. Maybe I'll backtrack and be like, damn, Uber was definitely out. I was just a fucking Luddite. But ultimately, like, this is where we are, right? So I'm like, I'm getting on this bus. Plus, I'm broke. That's very important. I no job. I'm broke. So now I'm like, fuck, I have shit in my drawers and I gotta get on this fucking, bus. And I know that I stink, obviously. So I'm like, damn. And I can't sit because I have morals and principles. I'm not gonna sit in this now. We're not gonna make this a worse situation, right? These drawers gotta get thrown out anyway, but this don't gotta get as messy as it can possibly get just because I'm drunk. And shitting yourself will sober you up quicker than most things you can imagine. So I am on this bus, standing in the back. There's only like 4 people on the bus. Nobody noticed. And I went home. And that very night, I said, I'm done with vodka. Because I needed something to blame. I couldn't believe. Now, mind you, right, if I was still of that type of mindset, right, I would have to be done with tequila. But I'm not. I'm never going to be done with tequila. Every time I have excessive amounts of tequila, negative, terrible shit happens. The likes of which only used to happen when I was drinking vodka. The likes of which don't happen when I do too much whiskey or when I do too much rum, right? Like, when I do too much tequila, crazy, wild shit happens to me. I wake up in hospitals, black out for half my nights, and don't remember shit that went down at the work party. Like, I'm telling you, bro, like, tequila, like, I probably should cut tequila out of my life, but I won't. What I do is I consume tequila in moderation. Most nights I'm out, I won't do it. Sometimes in the crib, when I know I'm a more controlled drinker in the crib, right? Where it's like, I don't even finish my drink half the time when I pour myself up in the crib. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something about different environments. Like, drinking to my leisure, to my content. I'm a guy that likes to drink. Later in this podcast, perhaps we can discuss the greater implications of being a guy that likes to drink and who tends to be the motherfucker telling you, I'm just a guy that likes to drink. But I'm just saying, I haven't sworn off tequila yet. And I've opened my mind more to vodka the more that I learn and the more that I accept responsibility for the type of shit that was happening in my life when I was like a vodka drinker. But that was a really long-winded way of telling you motherfuckers why I'm not really a vodka nigga. So a lot of those drinks that seem appealing as like, oh, well, this could just be a go-to. Like a vodka and soda is wild easy, right? But then again, you don't have to do that. You could do a rum and coke. You could do a fucking gin and tonic. There's so many things you could do. I like gin. I like rum. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why. My mind is just sporadic like that. There's more chaotic energy inside of me that does not allow me to go to bars knowing what I want. Sometimes I'll be like, fuck it. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do 1 scotch, 1 bourbon, and 1 beer like the blues, baby. That shit should work too. Like, I'm still waiting to go to a bar and just do that. I'm like, that's you know what I mean? When the ancestors hand you down perfect recipes that will carry you on indefinitely, my nigga, you gotta have some respect, my nigga. If you want to go out and have a nice night at the bar, you can go 1 scotch, 1 bourbon, 1 beer, nigga. You can order that all at the same goddamn time, bust that down and be good for a while. You might only have to re-up 1 more time for the rest of the fucking night. And you wouldn't have spent that much money, depending on who you are. I don't know, my nigga. I done seen niggas walk into a dive bar and ask for Don Julio. And I just feel like at that point, you kind of defeating the purpose. You really kind of defeating the purpose of going to a dive bar. Like, shout out to the dive bar for having Don Julio and shit like that on deck, obviously. But, like, brother, ew. Like, why would you go somewhere where, like, kind of the whole appeal of it is it being, like, a cheaper experience? Just to up the ante anyway and go spend money. You might as well win anywhere for fucking Don Julio and all that shit. But, like, so obviously your scotch, bourbon, and beer could be far more expensive. But I don't know. I feel differently on different days. Right? Some days I'm like, yeah, it's a rum day. Some days I'm like, yo, it's a tequila day. Most days, I'll say, because especially at work, like when I'm working at the bar and shit like that, like it's usually whiskey. All right, it's just real easy. It's not gonna have you charged. Like, you know what I mean? You have 2 tequila shots, hour and a half, 2 hours into your shift. You don't know what's happening next. You really don't. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You know what I mean? It just really depends. How that tequila hits you is gonna be how that shift is gonna go. I ain't got time to be overheating, sweating, making bad decisions. Like, nah. It can't be that. It can never be that. You know, but I do kind of think now as I'm getting older, I just don't want to have to think. so much. I want my little go-to. And there's different spots where, like, I know my go-to at certain spots. You see, that's more the type of nigga I'm at. Like, if a spot got a drink I like the way they make this, then when I go here, I want this. You know what I'm saying? Like, here's my rum punch spot. Here's my painkiller spot. This spot do like a nice like coffee slushy with whiskey. Like, I want that. I like that. You know what I mean? It should come in a nice little plastic coffee cup for the ambiance. And that's the type of shit that maybe I'll be drawn to. Like, this place has a nice frozen Saturn, my nigga. You know what I mean? I don't know. And I don't know how old you are if you listening. Like, I might be putting you on game. I might be preaching to the choir. You like, you ain't said nothing but a word. Half the drinks I mentioned might have you like, oh, you still doing that? Maybe you have some growing up to do. I don't know, my nigga. I'm not even particularly concerned with how this shit rubs you, but I'm just saying, right? You go to different places, you experiment and shit like that. And that's one thing that I've noticed, especially with like my move, right? Like, I used to live in Flatbush, now I live in Bed-Stuy. There is this going out and bar culture that exists on this side of Brooklyn. It does not necessarily exist in the same way. On the side of Brooklyn, I've previously found myself on where it was just like, there are bars, there are dope bars, you know what I'm saying? But like, there aren't many bar strips where like on a Friday, Saturday night, you can expect all these places to be jumping and packed and shit like that. Those places exist, but like, I feel like the culture, like just like being in those places all the time and having like a bunch of different unique ones, for you to like call home for a while. Like, you might go to this one for a few months, damn near every other weekend. You might go to this one, shit like that. So like, that's definitely been dope that I appreciate. Especially when it comes to food, right? Like, I don't want to have to go to a fucking lounge to eat and drink at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Like, to eat and have good vibe music and shit like that and drink at the same time. I don't want to have to go to a lounge or an actual restaurant. You want a bar with an elite kitchen. With a nice kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Like, preferably be some real shit where you can get, like, maybe some wings. I know that's asking for a lot, but maybe you get some wings. Maybe they got a burger they offer. I've been to a spot that did chicken and waffles, and I was like, perfection. Genius. Now, they doubled as a brunch spot, obviously, but this was like 10 at night. It was like 10 at night. I'm soaking up some of this fucking whiskey or whatever the fuck I was drinking. It was probably tequila at that time. I'm soaking up some of this tequila with this good old chicken and waffles, and we ain't gonna go outside in here. We not. Because that's the other part. There's all this mythology around eating and drinking. And trust me, I get it. It makes sense. It's not like this shit is coming from nowhere, but it's like, that's one thing that you kind of got to learn how your body operates too. Like, I used to be able to bust down dinner fully and then go out. And like, nah, like, I mean, you should eat before you go out and drink and shit like that. But like, you eat too much, like, now I'm sluggish. Now the liquor is making me feel like I should just go to sleep. Right? You be in a spot kind of falling asleep on yourself. Like, I was in a spot the other night with one of my dogs and about 12:20. We looked at each other and we was both like, this nigga's done. This nigga's done. Let's call it. I was waiting on another homeboy to maybe hit me and let me know if he was going to meet us. But at that point, he hadn't hit me. I figured he wasn't going to hit me. He was, linking with a girl that he wanted things to go really well. And I was like, him not hitting me means it probably went well. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, whatever. You know what I mean? By 1, we was out of there. Like gentlemen. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what I'm starting to appreciate more. I'm starting to appreciate more of that, you know what I mean? Just being out of there as gentlemen. But I did see something. Now, I did see something that I have to raise in the question, you know what I'm saying? That I do have to put on trial because it was some of the wildest shit I'd ever seen. So, I'm out with my dog and another guy that I fuck with, right? From the, that be in the bar that I'm at, right? Like, I don't really know him too personally outside of that, but I know when I'm outside, he's good people. And so we fuck with each other. Like, we'll usually end up hanging out around each other if we in the spot at the same time. Probably hanging out together, sitting together, whatever. Right? Because I'll go sometimes by myself. I run into him and I'm like, all right, this is my road dog tonight. So it is what it is. But, right? 3 of us, it was 3 motherfuckers sitting at the fucking bar and they got up and left, right? And one of them had just ordered a fresh Miller Lite. Fresh. He probably took a sip 2 max. You probably know where this story's going. He probably took a sip 2 max, seen his man's had already called the Uber and had no intention of waiting for him, and he walked right off in his Miller Lite. Now, I know they call Miller Lite the champagne of beer, and maybe it is, but it's not expensive. Anywhere you go, you can get Miller Lite for cheap. So I'm sure that motherfucker wasn't sweating at $4. But I'm just saying, we've all understand that technically that is relatively unused liquor that's going to go to waste. Not liquor, a relatively unused beer that's not going to go to waste. So the homie, not the homie that I came with, but the homie that I know from the spot, he said, fuck that, that's a full beer. Took the beer, grabbed the cup, dumped the shit in his shit, right, man? Now, mind you, when we got in there and I seen him, I wasn't going to just like buy the first round for me and my homie, but just have him in the group with us now and not buy him a shot too, right? So I bought him a shot too, off rip, whatever like that. But I didn't know he was only trying to have one drink that night, because this was what he would say later. He was like, damn, I came out the house. Because then after that, right? So boom, he pours out the fucking beer. He pours out the fucking beer in a cup and he drinks that shit and he's like, hell yeah. And I'm just like, hell yeah. Me and my boy are acting like this is not wild to us. And I still have to ask my boy if this was wild to him. To me, it was wild, but it wasn't, it was funny wild, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was make some noise for that nigga. Stand in your truth, King. You have to stand in your truth on shit like that. If you're embarrassed, you shouldn't be doing it. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that my man was standing in his truth and he had logical reasons for why he was doing what he was doing, it made sense. Yo, I just watched this beer. I just seen this man order this shit, take one sip out of it and walk away. I'm drinking the rest of this beer. It's still fucking cold. It's still frigid. It's freezing. This beer is cold to the touch. There's fucking, you know what I mean? There's frost on this shit. It's a nice beer. So he's like, fuck it. Hawks it. And then later the bartender, she accidentally gives him a beer. Like, I think she thought he was the one that ordered it and he wasn't. So then he gets another beer. So like, aside from the one drink he left the crib like to buy himself, he got a shot of whiskey. He got 2 beers. He was like, yo, man, I love this spot, because this is the type of spot you could leave without no intentions or expectations of getting drunk and end up drunk. You just gotta not expect it. I'm like, okay. Like, I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't know what that means, but like, right? Because I'm like, we just got different types of luck. You must be a handsome motherfucker, because I leave the crib, and if I don't get myself drunk, nobody ever gets me drunk. Like, you know, you get to some spots where, like, all right, like a guy likes you, he buys you a drink, like, you know what I'm saying? But like, that's not often, right? Because motherfuckers is in these types of spots trying to angle themselves to buy a girl that they like a drink. They're not necessarily worried about wasting money on you. They already know that you seen each other with drinks. Y'all been good all night covering drinks. So like, it's not necessarily a need for the niceties. Like, what would it be? Like, the idea is not that I can't afford a drink. You just buying me a drink to show me that you fuck with me. But how about I already believe you fuck with me, and therefore we don't have to buy each other anything. It's just an exchange of money. You might as well just both pull out a $20 bill and hand it to the other person, right? We pay the same price for the drink relatively anyway. My nigga, you could have just bought your next drink and I bought mine, so I totally get it. But that shit don't really happen to me that much. So he must just be more charming than me. Now, what I failed to disclose is this bar is also a big cocaine spot, right? I'm saying, like, look, motherfuckers just coked out. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. A lot of people talking to each other with their faces really, really close, infinitely close together, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of olive eyeballs, right? Like, everybody's eyes are popped. Motherfuckers is, you know what I mean, alert. You know what I mean? Focused in this spot. So, perhaps that had something to do with it. You know what I'm saying? But all I know is that became a question in my head where I was like, this has to happen, right? Like, I've never seen it happen at my dive bar, but also maybe people are slick about it, where it's like, you don't want the bartender to see you doing this. But I just had wondered, I was like, is it wild to see a fresh beer sipped upon perhaps once, maybe twice, full to the neck of the bottle though? You know what I'm saying? Frosty, ice cold. It has not left your vision since it's been purchased. Is it wild to grab you a plastic cup and go ahead and throw that in there? Is as a bartender, are you like offended? Are you supposed to say something? Like, you poured the drink at the end of the day. Like, either you got paid for that one drink, right? Like, either somebody's gonna fucking drink it or it's gonna go to waste. And like, perhaps you could argue, well, that person could have like bought themselves a drink instead of drinking somebody else's drink, and then I would have had 2 people pay me. But the person who's pouring out that fresh beer probably is at the end of the money rope at that point, where it's like, I'm not about to, otherwise I would have just bought a drink, right? Like another drink, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't even think you can make that assumption, right? At the end of the day, you pour the drink, at least somebody drinks it, right? Like, cause like if you pour a motherfucker a shot and he gets an emergency and runs out of the bar before he gets the shot, doesn't come back, you're not pouring that shot back in the bottle. So, right? Like, on some level, I feel him. I feel gang, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, it is what it is. What I have seen that I'm also thinking about, like, and I'm kind of tossing around my head is, like, people will come to the bar, and, like, a lot more people than I thought was an occurrence would, like, order, like, wine, like red wine. And a lot of the red wine people be, like, you know, soccer moms or, like, somebody who's there with a book. So, like, obviously, if you're reading, you don't want to fucking, like, if you're reading or writing, you don't want to be slamming back hard liquor all the time if that's not what keeps you in a creative. And, like, you just kind of want the little buzz of the wine and feeling nice. And so that way you can continue to, like, read and retain information and do whatever, right? Like, so that's what I'm starting to appreciate, too. I'm like, why can't it be days when I go hit that motherfucker and I grab red wine or something, like grab a little wine at the bar? You know what I mean? Like, why the fuck not? I know what the homies gonna say, but I'm not necessarily worried about the homies. You know what I mean? I'm thinking that could be me, bro. Like, this me, cuz. Like, I'm loving that, bro. I don't see why it couldn't be. So, I'm getting back into writing, which is something that I haven't done consistently at all, really, since I was, like, maybe a preteen, right? Like, I definitely, like, once I started, like, playing basketball and taking that really seriously, it kind of just stopped, right? But a lot of things stopped for me at that point because I was so hyper-focused on that goal, and I felt like I had so much work to do that, I became really obsessive, and I did not allow myself, to really pursue any of the passions that I would pursue vehemently prior to my involvement in organized athletics. And not organized athletics is not to blame. I just was really, really obsessed with trying to, like, be a professional athlete, and I knew that me not being, like, involved in the systems of, like, AAU and shit like that from, like, a younger age, I knew that I was already starting at a disadvantage, having never played organized basketball until, like, the summer of freshman year. So, no, the summer after freshman year, I think. So, you know, it was difficult for me to nurture some of these habits. And then in adulthood, I found myself lacking time, or even, like, lacking being in a good enough mental space to realize how much I could be passionate about these things and how rewarding it can be to indulge yourself in these things. And also, like, I was making music and stuff like that. Like, it's never like there wasn't stuff I was focused on, right? I think the majority of the stuff that I was focused on, though, was, like, music, or, like, I had, like, a certain situation going on that, like, used to take up a lot of my time and energy and emotional bandwidth, too. So, also, if you're hearing music and bass right now, like, I'm sorry. I live across the street from the projects. I'm just hoping that this adds character to the podcast in some way, or that the magic makes it a master and filters that shit out. But I know you probably gonna get a little bit of what I'm getting right now, because I just had to stop this motherfucker real quick and listen. I thought something was wrong with the mic. They got shit woofing out there on my mama. I swear for God. But I'm back to writing, and that's taking me to a really cool place because of the fact that I stopped doing that prematurely. I think that it now, with the clarity and perspective I have on writing in general now, and obviously, not obviously, but, like, I've also begun reading a lot more as well, like I used to when I was younger. Right? Reading is something I kind of never stopped doing, but, like, there was a time when I was reading, like, I would say, like, max 2 books a year. When really, like, I feel much more satiated and positive and happy when I'm reading, more than that, right? But, like, you know, the writing has been, like, really, really rewarding, like, diving back into it and shit like that. And I don't want to act like I've discovered fire here. Like, I see people on the train knitting and doing this and doing that, like, or drawing in their sketchbooks, like this is, or in their iPads, like, I think that this generation especially is well equipped to understand and act on the fact that there's things outside of like work that bring you joy, right? And like if you in this generation, I think what we fall prey to is that like if you don't monetize it, it's not worth doing. It's worth doing, right? I don't have to publish any of the shit I'm writing for it to have been worth writing for me, because this is like, we have a creative fucking instinct as animals. We do. Like, I don't know about all animals, but I know human beings are creative, and creativity is perhaps a human concept, right? So to apply it to any other animal might just be personification, right? I don't fucking know. Now we're getting into areas not of my expertise. Honestly, there are very few areas that are my expertise, but I know that creativity, it benefits people, just like healthy social dynamics and healthy social groups benefit people, like on a physiological and psychological level. Like this is reality, right? So like, but in this world where so much is monetizable, and you really do have an opportunity to monetize a lot of the shit that you're passionate about, if you're willing to educate yourself and take that risk, because it is an opportunity. It's not a guarantee. It's not a right. Then yeah, the opportunity to try to publish or self-publish and all that shit like that. Like, these opportunities are there. But I think trying to be a professional music recording artist was like the last time I was ever going to make the crux of what I was doing trying to monetize the thing that is bringing me joy. I wouldn't change it. I would do it the same way if I was still making music, honestly, because that's kind of just how that goes. Especially like if you are somebody that feels hyper creative and that feels like you produce shit that means a lot to more than just you. I think that in music, it's a logical thing to do, is try to find a way to make some money off of it. Like, because it would be really great if you could do this for a career, whether you were writing songs for other people or whatever the case may be. That's just how that goes. But I was very exhausted by the whole process, and so I knew that I didn't really want that for me. In whatever my next creative endeavor was. So like when I write, I don't write from the perspective of one day publishing any of the things that I write. Right? Like I think I'm pretty good at it. Obviously, I think that it's meritorious of being shared with people, right? But at the same time, I'm back into it because it brings me joy. And to have arrived at this place from really what was an extremely, extremely dark place beforehand, is to me a blessing. It's to me a blessing. It's something that I'm very grateful for. Like, a lot of the time I wake up and I go, damn, you didn't think you would make it this far. Like, you could not see this far into the future because of all the stuff that was going on and all the ways you were letting yourself down. Like, you felt like you couldn't get to this point where you woke up every morning in a decent mood, focused on things, focused on goals, and not only focused on like goals that like are affecting you professionally, but also focused on your personal growth. Focus on learning how to fall, learning how to get back up, learning how to enjoy the journey. These are just things that I'm grateful to have a sense of perspective of now. Depression is a motherfucker. Poor decision making is a motherfucker. Addiction is a motherfucker. These things are real, and will be things that have to be monitored and policed in my life. And we'll get you somebody's like addiction. We'll get to that in a second. Or we can get to it now. So I wrestle with the idea that maybe I'm an addict. Where it's just like the things that so you ever wake up one day and you're like, wow, it sure takes a lot to keep me going. You're like, I need this, I need that. If I don't get my this, I'm going to be, and that's fine. But what happens is sometimes you just add shit, or it's like, okay, I've been doing this for a while, I'm going to do this. I'm doing this for a while, I'm going to do this. And like, I'm not talking about any particularly hard drugs. I'm not talking about that. Just to let the cat out of the bag on that one, because like someone somewhere may be thinking this is me telling people that I'm struggling specifically with opiates. I'm not. And I'm not also not saying that the fact that I don't struggle with opiates, and I do. I stay away from opiates because I see what the potential for me there is. I should probably couch it with that, which is like if I was indulging in hard drugs, which is not to say I have never indulged before, but like it would be stuff like every now and again. I'm not gonna lie, I could do a Percocet. I could do with one. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't, specifically because it's incredibly expensive. It's incredibly unsafe to be doing right now, and it's not good. It's not good especially if you like them. It's like you can lose days and weeks and months of your life to that type of shit. So like that's what I want to say. Like I'm not too good for opiates. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I'm terrified of opiates and therefore like will essentially only maybe once or twice a year enjoy, like do a recreational opiate for real. Like pop a Percocet, or like if I have to take a flight, if I can get a Percocet from somebody I trust, I might get a Percocet to pop before I get on a plane. Like, who the fuck knows? And I shouldn't be telling you guys this because this is all allegedly, right? And this is clearly illegal shit. But at the end of the day, I sacrifice myself to bring y'all an honest podcast because it's really been too long. But like, it takes coffee, right? It takes weed. I use tobacco with my weed, right? Like, it just takes a lot to keep me going every day, and it just becomes like you just add stuff, you layer it on, where it's like, all right, I'm doing this for a while and this is enough, and then boom, all of a sudden you're doing this and this is enough, and then boom, all of a sudden you're doing this, and that's the thing, is like you always layer it on once the first thing becomes like as easy as walking and breathing, right? Where it's like, okay, this no longer feels like I'm doing anything. This no longer feels like a performance enhancer. This no longer feels like a feeling repressor, right? But I think alcohol, right? Like I think my relationship to a lot of stuff is dangerous. It's dangerous, and so I try to monitor them. But like I wonder sometimes, like if I am an addict, right? Like just like not to any one substance in particular, but perhaps like just to distractions, right? Like I remember the first time that I tried to self-medicate with alcohol. I wasn't a big alcohol person, like as a teenager at all. Like I could count on one hand the amount of times I had experimented with it. But I remember the first time that I drank because I was sad and thought that I should drink. But I also remember having like depressive episodes where like I would take like a bunch of Tylenol PMs. Right? Like not because I was trying to die or overdose. No, just because like I wanted to like sleep an entire day or two away. I just didn't want to be awake dealing with like what I was going through and how I was feeling and stuff like that. And this is stuff that like my family didn't know I was doing. Right? That they've never found out I was doing. You know what I mean? Like I remember being like fucking 14 and like getting drunk. Not crazy drunk. I had like a beer or something like that, or Four Loko. But like for me, who wasn't a drinker and was 14 years old, like it was enough that I wasn't in my right state of mind, and I did it because I was going through something negative that was affecting me. And so I was like laying in bed trying to like fucking like decide if I was just gonna go to sleep and take a nap or whatever the fuck I was gonna do because I was feeling sluggish. And like my mom got a call from like one of our coaches of like one of the AAU teams I was playing on. He was like, "Yo, we got this thing. We need a guy. Like, can he come?" And it was like all of a sudden I was on my way to go play a fucking basketball game, and like I was very religious about like not consuming substances and training for games, practicing, or like playing in a game. Like I was very religious about that. So like this was like something I never struggled with like this again. But like I remember like being like, wow, I'm like not 100% sober, and like I have to do this now. But that's the other thing. When you're doing stuff like that, it gets in the way of shit. Like, you can't just have, like, 4 drinks and then go on about your night like you was going to go on about it. You, like, on a Monday and you got shit that you're trying to get done. You can't have 4 drinks before you do those things. Right? So sometimes I wonder if I should be approaching my life and the things that I do from the perspective of somebody who understands that, you know, on some level, he has an addictive personality, right? Because I don't want to call myself an addict because I'm not educated enough to know whether or not that's just a stupid thing for me to say. You'll learn that about me. Like, I'm not, just because it's just us here does not mean that I'm willing to sound fucking stupid. I'm not. I'm gonna sound stupid to somebody anyway, because I'm not perfect and I'm not like the brightest bulb in the bunch. But at the same time, I will do my damnedest not to like be overtly and outwardly fucking stupid on here. Like, it's not what I'm trying to project. I'm sorry. But yeah, like, I wonder sometimes if that's the appropriate way to kind of approach things, right? So I was talking to some of the guys at my job, right? And my job is a really interesting setting, right? Like, one of my jobs, the day job, it's like a really interesting setting because like it is just completely wild. It's the wild, wild west in there, right? So I posed the question, especially to the fathers in the office, right? It's a lot of men and there's one woman. And she's really, really cool. And she's like in on all the jokes and shit like that. It's not that type of environment where she's excluded from anything. And there used to be more women that worked there pre-pandemic. I just think somehow the way it shook out after the pandemic, like, left it to be like this. They used to have like 20 something employees. Now they have like 8 to 10, maybe. So the question was raised by me. It's a common question. Men have been asking this from time immemorial. Right? They've been gathered around fucking cave fires. They got their fucking cave paintings. They're looking at tripping balls off some kind of mushroom. And they will ask themselves this question. Every generation of men will have some variation of it. I go for $800 million tax-free. Would you blow a guy? Right? And guys with families to support. Guys with families. Guys who are supposed to be supporters. Providers. Who are supposed to be worried about the future of their family line. Said that for $800 million tax-free dollars, they would need a cock meat sandwich. And for me, that was very telling. Very telling. One of the responses I got was, and I upped the ante. I don't want y'all to think that I didn't up the ante, that I simply allowed this to float away in the wind without having up the ante. I'm a crackerjack negotiator. I knew that 800 mil would not be, that was just a starting point. So we went up to a billy. You know what I'm saying? We went up to a billy. Yo, would you blow a guy? Or would you let a guy blow you? I softened the question. Pause in this circumstance, but I softened the question. I said, all right, would you let a guy blow you? Guys with kids said no. Now, me, personally, I'm allowed to say no because I ain't got no kids. There's nobody that I'm being irresponsible toward by not blowing a guy. But I figure if you got kids and you get offered $1 billion fucking dollars, I know you got your morals and you got your principles, and I respect that. But there's no way every motherfucker in this room had morals and principles. That's just not how these things work. You got the chance to change your family's life forever. You wouldn't blow a guy? I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, if your wife need a life-saving surgery, and the only way for you to get it is to blow a guy, and you wouldn't blow the guy? How much do you love your wife? How much do you love your wife? And I know you got all the questions like, well, what if it takes too long? Or what if I'm not good at it? Or what if I like it? I know. And that's why I'm not going to conclude anything about this topic. I'm not here to shame anybody. I'm not here to shame the people that would blow a guy, and I'm not here to shame the people that wouldn't blow a guy. I just found it funny that nobody's children were worth blowing a guy for. And I heard somebody said like, how would I look at my son in the eyes? I'm like, what do you mean? How are you gonna look him in the eyes and tell him you could have changed everything forever and you were selfish because you didn't want to blow a guy? He doesn't have a Ferrari. You don't know. Your son probably don't carry the same, like negative thoughts toward gay for pay acts as you might. We live in a very sex positive world. Like, your son might be looking at you like, sounds like you're a pussy. Sounds like you was running from the dick, Pop. You know what I mean? That's a difficult spot to be in. a spot that I personally am glad that I don't have to worry about being in. But being outside nowadays is very difficult. Very difficult. Like, and I mean, like, actually, like, outside living life. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I feel the I don't give a fuck attitude of adulthood setting in. And I see why people who develop it earlier, like during their teenage years, like during their really, really early years of adulthood, I see why they're like fucking superheroes, right? Because you need that. It's a very powerful thing. And in a lot of ways, it will help you navigate this world much better than you just feeling beholden to everything that's going on around you and everything everybody says. Like, you can't give a fuck that people don't like you, right? Unless these are people that you need to like you. And I don't mean need to like you like you have a burning desire. No, I mean like unless it would benefit you in some way to have these people like you. And even sometimes in that case. But like, you can't give a fuck about people liking you. You can't give a fuck about people talking shit. You can't give a fuck about, and vice versa, you gotta get used to people not giving a fuck about you and not even expecting it. And I'm not gonna lie, you ridding yourself of the expectation that people give a fuck about you outside of like the people who like should give a fuck about you, life will be smooth fucking sailing. You'll stop feeling so slighted. And what the best thing that you'll get freedom from is feeling like you're obligated to give a shit about everything and everybody else. Within reason, of course. I'm just talking about like in your small bandwidth circle that you operate with and walk around in every day, right? Like, you should care for your fellow man on a greater level. You shouldn't. It should bother you that people are going hungry in the first world or anywhere around the world or this and that and the third. Like, I'm not saying that's nonsense. It's not. But like, the people that you can actively show and give care to, right? Those that's kind of your bandwidth. That's what you got, right? Like when the phones used to, I'm about to date myself, but like when that phone company had like, you got your Fave 5 and shit like that, like, yeah, like that's kind of how it works. Like it might be a Fave 5, might be a Fave 10, might be a Fave 20, but there's a cap on that motherfucker somewhere. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you could support Israel or you could support Palestine, whatever you want to do, but I guarantee you ain't got enough bandwidth to give a fuck about every single motherfucker individually. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not enough you for that. There's not enough you for that, my boy. So you can do it on a collective level, but, you know, it's hard, bro. It's hard to try to play this game that we're all on stage playing and play these roles while simultaneously like being hella involved in people's lives. And yo, I used to wonder like why, like, oh, I feel like people can tell when like something's not right, and like why don't people ever, like, more people just reach out and try to, cause you gotta keep moving, baby. You can't even really see that type of shit. Like, you can't even really allow yourself like to be like lollygagging enough to notice certain shit. Like, I do honestly believe now that there were certain people who never noticed how bad shit was with me because they was so focused on trying to keep shit from getting that bad for themselves. You feel me? So I don't know, like, as I settle into this shit, like, it just becomes easier for me not to care about a lot of shit, right? And listening, and I've always kind of been that way on one level because I just don't feel super attached to people. That's always been something I struggle with. It makes me very sad. It makes me very lonely, is that I feel like I do form bonds with people, but it's very, very difficult for me to form like a deep connection with a person. Just because I'm a very peculiar and particular person. There's no connotation there. I'm not saying that in a good way. I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm simply saying like I'm a very particular kind of guy. And it's very difficult for me to bond on that, like, inner level, like, deeper than just, like, oh, we're cool. Like, it's hard for me to bond with people, man, like, on that, like, level. Just because, like, your spirits kind of have to touch and align in some kind of way to have that. And it's just, like, we can get real cool. I don't know if our spirits will ever touch in the line. Right now, this is real nasty language that I'm using right now. Like, I don't even like using this real, like, wispy, fucking ethereal language to describe stuff. Like, I said that I'd like to save that for the writing. Right? That's not it's not really functional in conversation, in my opinion. I don't want to rely on that type of shit, but I'm just saying, like, there's this melding of understanding that happens when you really, really, really truly bond with somebody and connect with them on a deeper level. And I struggle greatly with that. Always have, always will. I have my people who I'm bonded to like that. They know who they are. But it's not like a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a lot of people. So it's just, it is what it is on that front. It is what it is on that front. But yes, listening to people talk is fucking stressful. And I know I'm doing a podcast. That's fucking insane to say as a podcaster, but I truly be exhausted trying to talk to certain people sometimes. Like, but you gotta do the people thing where you pretend 70% of the shit you hear in the wild is not some nut ass fucking shit, bro. Like, it's possibly has something to do with the demographic of what I'm around and how I grew up and everything like that. That it's like, maybe I'm just more inclined to hear ridiculous shit. I don't think so, given the state of this nation. Like, I don't think that, that just like nobody's running around encountering ridiculous shit and it's just like this really select demographic and group of people. Like, no, I think it's more than that. I think cable news itself is some ridiculous shit. And we see great swaths of the country still watching that. But, I think it goes like deeper than that, where it's like so much of the conversation that happens out in the world is just nonsense. And that's because conversation is not like, the purpose of conversation is not to be like scientific. Like, that's not what it is, right? It's not the nature of conversation. Conversation serves a very different purpose for human beings than like simply to convey information, right? Like it that is like then verifiably true, right? Like, that's not necessarily the purpose of it. Like, the biggest purpose of it is to socially bond groups. So, you know, like the but I think sometimes I'm just engaging without being able to actually share how I really feel about stuff. And that's where I start to feel those things. That's where it starts to become more difficult, when it's like, I now have to like not be who I am, or just like kind of like put it to the side, right? Like, when people like start saying stuff that to me is like ridiculous on its face, I kind of just get quiet. Cause if I don't know you like that, or I don't trust our rapport, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to disagree with you without like us getting into an argument about the thing now, like where you have to try to justify your opinion to me, which I'm genuinely just not interested in. Not to say I'm not interested in people's opinions, but like, if you say something that like to me is like wild and ridiculous, like at that point, like you don't need to make any effort to justify it, because it's just like it would take a miracle for me to like go the other way on that, like, right? Like, so it's like it's tough. It's tough for me, because in the performative aspect of conversation, there comes a tacit support of what the other person is saying. And I think that by offering that tacit support, oftentimes we are hiding who we actually are. And as you develop a better rapport with the person that you're tacitly supporting in these conversations, you theoretically become closer, but you also like start to stand stronger in this tacit support that's not real, that doesn't exist. And now you end up with friends that like believe shit that you think is harmful, or that like, you know, like it creates messiness. And but that's what relationships are, and that's what humanity is. That's the point of it all, right? Like, not the point of it, but it invites complexity, it invites nuance, it invites contrast. Like, these are the things that being a thinking human being, this is what comes with it. And I'm sure motherfuckers wouldn't give up being that. So, well, I gave y'all motherfuckers, that's damn near an hour. I won't lie to y'all. I've tried to record this podcast 11 times. I've really tried to bring you this same episode several different ways. The script has been rewritten, all types of shit. So I don't want y'all motherfuckers to think that I just be resting on my laurels. Go check out the PYO Boys podcast when you get a chance. Please and thank you. I promise you, if you like this, you'll like that. Maybe better. But yeah, the goal of this is to give you this bi-weekly or weekly. Really, probably weekly as often as I can, and bi-weekly when I don't have shit to talk about in between. Like, you know what I'm saying? Faf, following the Forrest podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me.